Hello there. Here we are with issue 29, and this is the bonus part of this issue. So, before we get started and start talking about the A-Wing Starfighter, let's go ahead and look at the details of the build issue, or the build video. So, let's have a look. Okay, so let's look at the details of this issue. So, this was issue 29. We had one video in this issue. We were working on the framework. Of course, we just did that ring. The record time was 28 minutes and 10 seconds. We only recorded the whole thing in a single capture. And again, that total capture was 28 minutes and 10 seconds. Our total build time was 28 minutes and 10 seconds as well. And the video time ended up being 14 minutes or 16 minutes and 40 seconds, which coincidentally ties our record for shortest video. And we did 14 screws in that one. Did no painting and no gluing. So again, we had our 16 minutes here. Now, we'll see a little bit later. I actually realized I can use this column to automatically populate the field over here that shows our smallest video time. So I was using a completely different column. I was using this column over here, I believe. So regardless, um, again, we had one capture. It was 28 minutes and 10 seconds long. And we had no off-camera time this time. Everything was done on camera. There was a little bit of preparation work, clearing off my desk so I could put the thing on there and whatever. But other than that, there was no build time off camera. So again, this was episode 46, and again, there we go. We now have this populated in here, and you can see my formula up there. We are now down to 31 minutes and 35 seconds for our average video time, so that's pretty cool. We've done 172, total of 172 screws up for 158, and that pretty much breaks it all down. So there you go. That's the data breakdown for issue 29. Let's go take a look at what's in the magazine. All right, so again, hopefully you guys are enjoying those details. I mean, it's not super fun or anything, but hopefully you find it interesting. So this issue, this bonus issue, is a little bit different because I kind of want to cover everything, but at the same time, I don't want it to be overly long. So let's just see where we can kind of condense stuff and all that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk about the A-Wing Starfighter, and this was built by the Kessel System Engineering. It was probably one of the fastest starfighters around. It was a evolution or a child of the Delta 7, which we covered. The Delta 7 was the Jedi um, ship, so it says light interceptor used by the Jedi Order. And it was built for speed. So because of the fact that it was built for speed, it didn't have the strongest shield generators, didn't have the most weapons, it didn't have the most armor. So that was always a bit of a problem. Right here, making speed the priority also meant that the ship wasn't as heavily armed or as other comparable starfighters. It was equipped with two pivoting lasers. So let's go ahead and go through our specifications here real quick before we turn the page. So it's known as an intercept fighter. It's only 9.6 meters long. Its speed is 1,300 kilometers per hour in atmosphere, so that's pretty darn fast. It's reaches 120 megalight speed. Acceleration is 5100 G, which is amazing. Engines are the twin Naval-Dex J77 Event Horizon engines, and those were replaced into those. This is the Rebel variations, so that's important. Maneuverability is 100 DPF. I'm not sure what DPF is, but it's got a Class 1 hyperdrive, sensor systems, blah, blah, blah. Countermeasures with Phantom short-range sensor jammer. Targeting computer is a Fabertech, blah, blah, blah. Short-line holographic imaging system. Weapons is a Borstal RG-9 2 laser cannons and 2 dynamic HM concussion missile launchers. And shields was a Surplix Z9 shields rated at 50 SBD and titanium alloy hull rated at 15 RU. Not sure what those numbers mean, but interesting nonetheless. So, it was cramped because they had all these avionics and stuff. They didn't have a spot for an astromech. Um, uh, um, the A-Wing's wedge-shaped bow was fitted with reinforced heat shield, intended as protection when entering an atmosphere. It had a more sinister reputation, as pilots without any hope of surviving had been known to use the bow as a battering ram to breach the hull of enemy spaceships. So that's, we've seen that actually. Let's go ahead and cover the old habits. Despite the Alliance victory at the Battle of Yavin, the loss of so many X-Wings to the Imperial TIE fighters proved the need for a dedicated interceptor. As a result, the A-Wing Starfighter saw increased production, as much as the credit-starved Alliance could afford. However, because the fighter was noticeably twitchy to fly and a little fragile under fire, the majority of the Rebel Alliance pilots preferred to stick to their trusty X-Wings. Nonetheless, at the Battle of Endor, a full squadron of A-Wing Starfighters joined the fight against the Empire's finest. So, yeah, that's pretty important. Before the foundation of the Rebel Alliance, several prototype A-Wings came to the possession of different Rebel cells, such as the Phoenix Squadron. So the Phoenix Squadron, that would be from Rebels. So if you're curious about that, Ace pilot Jake Farrell, an advocate and customizer of the ship, brought a couple to the Masasi Temple on Yavin 4 because of Farrell's expertise and love for the craft. He was invited to assist with the development of the Rebel Alliance's A-Wing variant. His first act was replacing the Quat Systems Engineering engines with blistering fast Nobula Dex J77 Event Horizon ones. That's what I had mentioned before. The original ones were from the Quat System Engineering. It was considered Intercept Starfighter, and it was used a lot for escorts and all that kind of stuff. It excelled at hit and fade missions and intelligence gathering. I would imagine it would probably work great because it's so fast at intelligence gathering. Surgical strikes and reconnaissance. I'm sure that's probably where it was used the most. In such operations, A-Wings activated their sensor jammers in the closing stages of the raid and headed towards the target at full speed while releasing their missiles. Before an effective defense could be mounted, the A-Wings were already out of reach. They were a capable dogfighter because they were very maneuverable. Sometimes nicknamed the Missile, with a man in it, an A-Wing was a finicky craft of all the starfighters and was a finicky craft. Of all the starfighters in the Rebel Alliance fleet, it was considered to be the most difficult to pilot. Part of this reputation came from its extremely sensitive control system that would only allow Alliance aces to fly it successfully. Because the A-Wing was subjected to incredible stresses, it also needed a lot of repairs due to regular breakdowns, and there were always rumors that the Rebel Alliance was considering ways to update the craft. So, one of the things it mentioned, and I didn't quite find it as I was scanning back through here, was that basically one shot would take this thing down. So, that's always important to note. So, of course, we know about the Battle of Endor and how it took an A-Wing that crashed into the Executor and caused it to end up crashing into the Death Star. So we kind of went through that as well. So um, uh, Arvel Crinid and Farrell, the guy that we were talking about back here, Jake Farrell, they had taken out the deflector shields, but Krennic's ship had been damaged, got shot, and he was the one that actually crashed into the command bridge. So that's important. Color change. Compact A-Wing was designed by Joe Johnston and modeled by ILM's Wesley Seeds and Lauren Peterson. Green Leader's A-Wing received a separate damaged wing that could be snapped into place for its final scene. As depicted in Ralph McQuarrie's production painting, the ship had blue markings, but this was changed to red to allow blue screen filming. The model featured a modified German World War I pilot, but the full-size A-Wing pilot's suit was designed by Nilo Rodas Gemero, while the helmet had a solid blast shield like the one Luke Skywalker trained with aboard the Falcon. Additional A-Wing pilots, among them an elderly lady, were filmed in their cockpits, but their scenes weren't used in the final film. So there you go. So here we're going to talk about a guide to the galaxy, and we're going to talk about the major trade routes. So the descriptions make it hard to kind of follow, but there's 5 trade routes. We can see this one here, you can see this one, you can see this one here, this one, and this one. So let's go ahead and kind of track through those. And basically, these hyperspace routes, these were used to avoid crashing into things. Han Solo tells Luke, it's not like, Dustin Crop's kid. You fly too close to a sun or a planet, blah blah blah. So, traveling the vast expanse of the galaxy can be a risky undertaking, and the establishment of the galaxy's main hyperspace routes went a long way towards making it safer. Spatial anomalies, asteroid fields, nebulas, and quasars are just a few of the dangers encountered by spacers, so good astrogation charts can help travelers to dodge multitude of hazards, and that's what these space routes ended up being. So let's go ahead and talk about them. So the Perlman trade route, it's founded 25,000 years ago. That's this one here is the Perlman. Uh, Runs from the core northeast towards Cormia, passes the key worlds of Tanab, Karida, and Renvar. Key route during the early days of the Republic, Perlman was a vital route for trade and exploration, blah, 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 blah. So this is the Perlman route. There's Tanab. Yeah, so there's that one. The next one is going to be the Corellian Run, and it was also formed 25,000 years ago. The Corellian Run played a huge role in making the Corellian system an economic powerhouse. The route runs southeast from Coruscant, ending at Nios and Lamard. Along the way, it intersects with the Hydean Way and touches planets in every portion of the galaxy, from the core worlds to the outer rim, along with the Perlman trade route. The Corellian forms the border of the area known as the Slice, which quickly becomes the most populated and explored region of the galaxy. So I believe that this one here is the one that is the Corellian Run. So it starts at Coruscant and comes down through here. And so that's the one that goes past Tatooine. That's what I believe. Anyway, we have the Riemann trade route, a major hyperspace route that was established 5,500 years ago and knitted together from a number of smaller routes. The Riemann trade route starts at Abrigado Ray and weaves its way south through the colonies. So it starts here, and this is the Rema trade, right? So that's the one that we're talking about there. And then we have the Hydean Way. The Hydean Way is the only route that passes through the entire galaxy, starting northeast at the corporate sector and ending near Polis Massus and Subterral. Established 3,705 years before the Battle of Yavin by Freya Kalia. This super hyper route wove together a myriad of smaller routes and gives privateers and traders a direct path, blah, 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 blah. So it crosses 30 sectors and all that, and that's this one, the Hydian Way. That's what they're talking about. Oh, they've actually got it color coded. I did not see that when I was reviewing this before. So yeah, this is the Hydian Way. And then the last one is the Corellian trade spine. And that's the one that starts at Corellia and comes down through here. And that's the one that goes past Bespin and Hoth down here. So the Corellian trade spine. So we have the Corellian run and the Corellian trade spine. Another ancient trade route established 25,000 years ago, but not fully formed until 19,500 years ago. The Corellian trade spine intersects the Rema trade route at Yagdal and the Hydian Way near Terminus. Starting at Corellia, this trade route has played a less important role in galactic history than the Corellian run, but, like its cousin, runs through every region of the galaxy, taking in the Icean corridor and the Greater Javan. Pardon me. Okay, so this one is talking about how Han had talked about doing the Millennium Falcon, had taken the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. If you've seen the movie Solo, you now understand how that actually comes to play, but this was actually kind of interesting. It's been a bone of contention. A parsec is a measurement of distance, not time, which raised the question of whether Star Wars creator George Lucas had simply made a mistake or whether he intended to indicate that Solo was lying. A look back at the revised 4th edition of the script from January 1976 helps clarify the matter. Han's line is, "It's the ship that made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs," which is followed by stage direction. Ben reacts to Solo's stupid attempt to impress them with obvious misinformation. This suggests that Lucas's original intention was to show that Solo is exaggerating, saying anything to get the charter to take Obi-Wan Kenobi and young Luke Skywalker to Alderaan for a cool 17,000 credits. However, by the final cut, Ben's reaction is a mere glance that might simply suggest his skepticism about how fast the ship is. As the expanded universe grew and developed, Solo's words were taken literally, so that a logical explanation for his remark, the possibility that the Falcon's speed allowed Han to cut corners and so shorten the Kessel Run, came to be part of Star Wars lore, which we know that is what actually happened. And so, again, it's going to talk about the Kessel Run here as well, but so we do know exactly what happened per the Solo movie. So there you go. Combat techniques. Techniques 1, stages of engagement. This is our secrets of spaceflight. So this basically talks about the different stages of a space flight. And so one of the kind of interesting things that I thought about this was it talks about here, earlier generation star pilots may well have intuitively understood how a successful space combat evolves. However, their technique remained an informal code until an Imperial defector to the Rebel Alliance by the name of Adar Talon explored the rules of engagement in detail in his book Treatise on Starfighter Tactics. Talon unpacked and formulated 5 key stages in any battle, which he set down as detection, closing, attack, maneuver, and disengagement. Now, I can tell you that all of these hold true, even in ground battle, hand to hand, what have you. Those are all true regardless. It doesn't have to be space battle alone. So, of course, we have the detection. Now, one of the things this talks about, this goes through the entire process of how Han used detection to help save Luke and, what have you. So, it basically says the trick to detection is that you can detect them first before they detect you. That way you get the advantage of figuring out what you're going to do before they do. Then you have the closing. A good stage 2 is closing. A good starfighter speed means that it can appear to blast out of nowhere fast, which gives its pilot a far better chance against his opponent in the starfight. Han Solo demonstrated this great effect when he used the Millennium Falcon's capabilities against Darth Vader's TIE advanced X-1 fighter at the Battle of Yavin. So there you go. If you can close in, then you can attack. Stage 3 is the attack. Pilot only gets one chance to surprise his enemy, so he must choreograph his closing run to bring the ship's weapons to bear at the optimum point. And then, that talks about how Han did that when he came in and was able to shoot out the ties. Then stage 4 is to maneuver, and this is basically talks about which means that it needs to follow through. After you make the attack, the Falcon's attack allowed Skywalker to launch the ship's torpedoes at the Death Star with only seconds to spare. If Solo had ignored Stage 4, the Falcon would have been vaporized by the Death Star. So basically, once you make that attack, you get out of there, type of thing. And the last one is the Stage 4 is the disengagement. Pilots who lower their guard during the fifth and final stage of the combat often do not live to fight another day. Solo and Chewbacca knew that their victory over the primary enemy, Vader and his wingmen, did not mean that there wasn't another Imperial TIE fighter lurking nearby. With the Millennium Falcon in his crosshairs, the pair had learned this fact the hard way, as they often found themselves taking the Falcon back through stages 1 through 5 again, several times in the space of minutes. Meaning that if you don't disengage and get out of there once you've done whatever it is you need to do, you're just going to get drawn into another fight. So there you go. That's the Secrets of Space Flight and the Combat Techniques #1. So the war movie influences. If you didn't know this is pretty interesting. So the combat scenes in Star Wars: A New Hope were inspired by dogfights and bombing missions in World War II and the Korean War. Such was their influence on director George Lucas that he cut several dogfight scenes from old war movies together to form a guide for Joe Johnston of Industrial Light Magic, who was tasked with coming up with the final shots. Johnston recalled a lot of battle sequences was cut using excerpts from movies such as The Dam Busters, Bridges of Noko-Ri, and 12 O'Clock High. My job was to interpret and storyboard that sequence. I basically ran through his cut back and forth on the Moviola, the editing machine, and where there was a fighter plane attacking a bomber, I had to turn it into a TIE fighter attacking the Millennium Falcon. There was quite a bit of interpretation involved, but there was a blueprint to work from. And the broad strokes, had been determined by George and his cut, so it was just a matter of transporting the World War II planes to a set of spacecraft. The look of the classic warplanes inspired the original look of the Rebel Alliance Starfighters, which came with bubble canopies, but problems making their compound curve work properly in front of blue screens led to that idea being abandoned in favor of more angular aesthetic. We wanted to make the ships look like they had been maintained with spare parts, Johnston said. Damage had been patched with big panels of a different color. George kept emphasizing that he wanted the ships to look like hot rods. They needed to look old, greasy, maintained with spare parts, and sort of held together with wires and chewing gum. So there you go. That's pretty interesting. There was something back here. Where was this? Here. Yeah, I'm not sure what that was. This was talking about the Trade Federation. Basically, they like hid some of the space routes, and anybody that used them, they would tax them. So as a result, they kind of monopolized the whole trade route stuff and the trade stuff. So we didn't have any additional stuff in here like we usually do, a little behind the scenes action. But that is the end of issue 29. So we put the ring in and all that kind of stuff. Next time we're going to get 2 more pieces of framework, some more rib, screws, all the bracing, and some more plating. So I'm guessing we're going to probably put together some more of the framework in issue 30. So with that, I will say thank you guys all for watching, and may the Force be with you always.